I think that I just have to respectfully go, have a good life. Via con Dios.
The gavel fell once, hard enough to cut through the din. "Order," the judge intoned, his tone firm but wearied. It was the same phrase he had spoken 100 times since the trial started, but today it sounded different. Today it sounded like a threat. The courtroom was filled. Reporters shoulder to shoulder, camera strobes reflecting off sheened oak, the air heavy with perfume, sweat, and expectation. The crowd wasn't in attendance for justice. They were in attendance for blood. At the defense table, Kody Brown sat rigidly, his countenance a mask of defiance, although the creases at the corners of his eyes gave away fatigue. His suit, which was once crisp, now dangled loose, as if even the material had lost faith in him. Next to him, Robyn blew her nose into a tissue, yet the gesture seemed practiced, as if a line she'd played too many times to remain believable. Across the aisle, Janelle and Christine sat patiently, not victorious, not yet. Lawyers in each corner of the room shuffled papers, serene, intent, prepared. This was the moment everyone had been anticipating. The judge pushed his glasses up his nose, looked at his clock, and declared, "Bring in the witness." Each camera lens leaned forward simultaneously. Doors opened. A woman intervened, early 40s, stern but unruffled, her stance upright, her face impassive. Her name was Kara Bennett, one that few in the courtroom knew. But in the space of an hour, it would be the name on everyone's social feed, podcast, and headline nationwide. Kara was no relation, no acquaintance, no ex-wife. She was something much more sinister, an insider. As she proceeded toward the witness stand, Kody's jaw tightened. Robyn stood still, her tissue half raised to her face. Christine's attorney leaned over to whisper in her ear. Christine just nodded, eyes fixed on Kara. The bailiff extended the Bible. "Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do," Kara replied, voice steady but firm. The prosecution came at her. "Ms. Bennett, please state your occupation for the record." "I was an accountant for Family Traditions, LLC," she replied. "The Browns joint venture?" The words hit like a match in a crowded room. The audience grumbled. Even the reporters ceased typing for a moment. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Proceed." The prosecutor smiled ever so slightly. "Ms. Bennett, can you tell the court how long you worked for Family Traditions, LLC?" "Near 5 years," Kara answered. "From the beginning of 2018 up to the end of 2022. "And what was your job during that period of time?" "I managed financial reports, bank reconciliations, and vendor payments. I also kept communication between the family's income from production and their private accounts." "So you saw both business and personal records?" "Yes," Kara said. "Complete access." Kody shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Robyn's hand came to his arm, but he did not shift. The prosecutor's voice went down an octave. "Ms. Bennett, you've heard earlier testimony indicating that money from the family's joint account was transferred without permission. Did you see it?" "Yes," Kara replied. The courtroom fell silent. "Please tell me what you saw." Kara caught her breath. "In mid-2019, I saw frequent transfers from Family Traditions LLC to another business, K&R Holdings. I originally thought it was taxes or payroll, but when I asked for documentation, I was told that it was personal business, not accounting records." "Who did you hear that from?" Kara hesitated, casting a fleeting glance toward the defense table. "Robyn Brown?" The courtroom air grew heavy. Robyn's eyes grew wide. "That is not true," she exclaimed. But the judge's gavel silenced her. "Mrs. Brown?" he cautioned. "You'll get your chance." Kara went on, unflappable. "When I questioned further, I was advised by Kody himself to mind my own ledgers. But as an accountant, I could not disregard discrepancies. The family account was being depleted at a rate greater than the income warranted. I began monitoring transfers, covertly." The prosecutor nodded. "And what did you discover?" Kara addressed the jury straight on. "During a period of over 18 months, over $400,000 was moved from Family Traditions LLC into K&R Holdings, all of which not reported to the other wives. Murmurs spread through the courtroom. The judge again called for order, but nothing could stem the tension. Christine's attorney smiled weakly. She didn't have to say a word. The figures spoke for themselves. The prosecutor approached nearer. "Ms. Bennett, what did you do with this data?" "I recorded everything," Kara replied. "Dollar amounts, dates, comments. I printed account reports and made computer copies. I figured if somebody ever questioned me, I'd have it ready." "And did someone ever question you?" "Yes," she replied. "When Christine and Janelle's lawyers called last year. I gave them everything." Kody pounded his fist on the table. "You stole from me," he bellowed. The gavel of the judge cracked once more. "Mr. Brown, one more remark and you'll be in contempt." Kody leaned back, panting. The prosecutor didn't blink. "Ms. Bennett, did you change any records or make up any information?" "No," she replied briefly. "Everything I have here is verifiable. Every document has been authenticated." The lawyer addressed the jury. No further questions. The defense attorney, Croft, stood slowly. His smile was a thin, forced one. "Ms. Bennett," he started, "you've testified that you were an employee of the Browns for 5 years. Is that right?" "Yes, and yet you're no longer working there." "Why is that?" "I resigned," she replied. "Resigned? Or were you dismissed?" "I quit," Kara said again, her tone level. Croft walked back and forth in front of the jury box. "Fascinating. And was your resignation possibly related to your supposed concerns regarding the Browns' business affairs?" "Yes," Kara replied, "because when I asked too many questions, I was cut off." "So you were irritated?" "I was concerned," she replied. Croft sneered. "Concerned enough to make copies of personal documents that didn't belong to you?" Kara met him stare for stare. "Concerned enough to shield the truth." A hum ran through the gallery. Croft attempted another try. "Ms. Bennett, you appear very certain. But how do we know you might not have misinterpreted? Family Traditions LLC was a complex business. Couldn't these transactions have been routine business activity?" "I reviewed the memos, account comments, and vendor lists," she said. "And there were no matching invoices. And the money didn't go to service providers or suppliers. It went straight into a standalone personal account called KN&R Holdings." Croft threw up his hands dramatically. "Perhaps it was a valid investment." "Did you inquire?" "Yes," she said, "and I was instructed to cease inquiring." The room erupted once more. Whispers, gasps, click of camera shutters. The judge signed with exasperation. "Order!" Croft moved a step further up to the stand. "Ms. Bennett, isn't it true that you subsequently accepted consulting engagements with Christine Brown's team?" "Yes," Kara replied, emotionless. "So you're paid to testify against my clients." Kara's response cut like a knife. "I'm paid for my time, not my truth." Even the judge permitted himself the most remote wisp of expression. Respect. Croft opened his mouth, but Kara continued talking. "And for the record, I didn't show up here for money. I showed up because for years I witnessed individuals I worked for, individuals I respected, lie to one another, lie to the network, lie to the public. I watched a family disintegrate while 2 individuals constructed a fortress out of everybody else's sacrifice. This isn't about revenge, it's about accountability." Silence. Authentic, heavy silence. Croft faltered. His scripted words dissolved. For an instant, there was only the soft hum of the ceiling fan in the courtroom. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Croft?" Croft blinked, was jolted back into action. "No further questions," he mumbled, withdrawing. As he took his seat, Robyn caught at his sleeve, speaking fiercely under her breath. He shook his head. "Nothing to repair." The prosecutor asked again for redirect. "Ms. Bennett, a final question. You said that when you found those transfers, you stored them digitally. Where are they today?" Kara's tone remained even, but her response chilled the air in the courtroom. "They've already been filed with the court. But there's more. Some of the files were too big to send by email. So I hand-delivered them to federal investigators." The courtroom erupted. The judge pounded his gavel again and again. "Order! Order in the court!" Reporters almost stumbled over one another. Robyn's face blanched. Kody shook his head and mumbled under his breath. The prosecutor smiled slowly. Federal investigators, Ms. Bennett? Yes. I thought that some of the financial transactions might have traveled across state lines. That becomes a federal matter. The judge's forehead wrinkled. Counsel, come forward. As the lawyers hurried to the bench, the room buzzed with tension. Christine glanced at Janelle, her expression unreadable. They had known there were missing pieces, but not this. Not federal. The bailiff whispered to a clerk, who disappeared into a side door, likely to alert the U.S. Attorney's Office that something bigger was brewing. As the bench conference concluded, the judge surveyed the courtroom. This court will recess for an hour, he said. Counsel, be on standby. The gavel hit the desk. The crowd erupted once more. As people filed out of the room, Kody stood up slowly, his fingers wrapped around the table edge. For the first time, he appeared genuinely scared. They won't stop, he whispered to Robyn. Robyn didn't respond. She sat straight ahead, unfocused eyes, shaking lips. In the corner of the room, Christine collected her papers, cool and methodical. It's over, she breathed to Janelle. Janelle nodded. No, she whispered. It's just beginning, and she was right. Because what nobody knew, not the media, not the jury, not even the judge, was that the next witness in line outside wasn't with the prosecution or the defense. They were from somewhere else altogether, and the mayhem that ensued would make today's news seem like the quiet before the storm. When court resumed an hour later, the air had changed. The audience had tripled. Reporters lined the walls. Even the guards looked uneasy. Everyone had heard what Kara Bennett said before the break. Federal investigators. Those two words had detonated like a bomb. The judge returned to the bench with a face carved from stone. Let's proceed, he said. Ms. Bennett, you're still under oath. Kara pulled herself up straighter. The prosecutor moved closer to her. When we recessed earlier, you had testified to giving more documents to federal officials. What did they contain? Yes, Kara replied. They were financial statements, wire transfers, and internal mail, all connecting the family's primary business account to several private entities. Several? The prosecutor asked. Yes, Kara replied. K&R Holdings was just one. Two others existed, RB Consulting and Prairie Gate Media. Both were set up using fictitious addresses but with the same tax identification history. The prosecutor allowed that to register. And who controlled these entities? Kara hesitated. Legally? Robyn Brown was on one, Kody Brown on another. But they cross-dated checks for one another. A murmur passed through the assembly. Robyn clutched the side of the defense table. Ms. Bennett, the prosecutor went on, how were these accounts paid for? Transfers, Kara replied. Sometimes directly out of TLC production payments, sometimes by way of intermediary checks presented as family needs. The prosecutor walked over to the screen on the side of the witness stand. A spreadsheet glowed, figures streaming like rivers. Can you help the jury follow this pattern? Kara leaned in. These are not typical withdrawals. They were made in amounts just under reporting levels. 20,000 here, 15,000 there. Classic cover-up behavior. Defense Attorney Croft stood up. Objection, speculation. The judge nodded. Sustained. Stick to the facts, Ms. Bennett. Kara nodded. The facts are straightforward, Your Honor. Money was missing. I can show you where it was going. The prosecutor waved a file. Let's enter Exhibit 54. It was a pile of screenshots, emails between Robyn, Kody, and a guy named Elliot Harper. Who is Mr. Harper? A financial advisor from Nevada, Kara replied. He worked in asset protection, offshore schemes, shell companies, that sort of thing. The prosecutor read on. Elliot, keep the wire details from the wives. Use the private routing list, not the business one. The courtroom gasped. Who sent that? Kody Brown, she whispered. Croft sprang to his feet once more. Objection. Lack of proof of authorship. The prosecutor held up another document. Exhibit 55. Same email header, same IP address, same timestamp. And attached, she turned to the judge, is a PDF bearing Mr. Brown's digital signature. The judge read slowly, looking down. Overruled. Croft slumped back into his seat. Robyn's hand shook. Kody sat rigid, face empty, color lost. The prosecutor looked at Kara once more. Ms. Bennett, what did you think when you initially saw this message? Kara paused. I thought it wasn't a matter of protecting the family. It was about keeping them isolated. Elaborate on that. They were big on unity in public, Kara said. But behind the scenes, they talked about Christine and Janelle as liabilities. They called them uncontrolled assets. They weren't wives to him anymore. They were figures to delete. The words lingered. Janelle stared at her hands. Christine breathed through her nose, struggling to keep it together. The prosecutor shook his head slowly. Ms. Bennett, while you were with the Browns, did you ever hear any talk of legal exposure or discovery? Yes, Kara replied. After Christine departed. They knew questions would arise. Robyn had told me once, we need to put everything in my name. I'm the safe one. Robyn's voice broke in the courtroom. That's not what I said. The judge glared. Mrs. Brown, you'll be silent. Kara stared straight at her. You stated it in July 2021, shortly after Janelle requested access to the books. The eyes of Robyn welled up with tears. You're distorting. Stop that, the judge snapped. Kara faced the prosecutor again. I'm not distorting anything. I retained the memo where she wrote it. The prosecutor waved a photocopy. Exhibit 56. Handwriting analysis confirmed it. Robyn hid her face. The prosecutor's tone became gentler. Ms. Bennett, you've been brave to come forward. Why now? Kara swallowed hard. Because I couldn't sleep. I watched Christine get blamed for leaving. I saw Janelle get shamed for asking basic questions. The ones who were responsible for it all hid behind a paper wall. I was also an accomplice for keeping silent. I couldn't do that anymore. The courtroom fell quiet once more. Even the reporters lowered their cameras briefly. Then the prosecutor inquired, There's one final thing, isn't there? Kara nodded. Yes. Please describe it. A recording, Kara replied. The defense table rustled. What type of recording? Kara's voice was firm. A recording of a conversation between Kody and Robyn. It happened in September 2021, the week that Christine said she was leaving. They didn't realize their home security system recorded audio. Croft was on his feet. Your Honor, this is outrageous. The judge cut him off. If it's authenticated, it stands. It is, the prosecutor said. The metadata checks out. The bailiff dimmed the lights. The screen flickered, audio playing through tinny speakers. At first, only static. Then Kody's voice, unmistakable, low and angry. If she takes anything, we'll bury her in paperwork. She doesn't get to win. Robyn's voice, softer but crisper. Then transfer the money now. Use the hold account. Make it seem like a refund. Static. Then silence. The lights flickered on again. The judge leaned back slowly. The court will recess again. 10 minutes. He stood up and left without a word. No sooner was the door closed than mayhem began. Reporters yelled into phones. Cameras clicked like shots. Kody stood enraged. That tape's faked. It's taken out of context. Christine stood up from her chair, impassive but firm. There is no context that excuses that. Security interposed between them. Robyn shook, turned away. Kara stayed on the stand, unmoving, eyes ahead. She had anticipated commotion. She hadn't anticipated the quiet beneath it, that whispered pause when a room acknowledges something that can't be undone. As the judge came back, the bedlam ceased immediately. He smoothed his papers and surveyed the assembly. This court will permit cross-examination, he declared. But let me make one thing very clear. One further outburst, and I empty this room. Croft stood and nodded rigidly. Ms. Bennett, you've certainly provided us with an act, he said. Let's be real. You didn't come in here looking for justice. You came in looking for attention, didn't you? No, Kara responded. Attention is what they sought. I seek truth. Truth is relative. Croft smiled without amusement. Not when it's printed on bank statements, she said. He attempted a different tack. You say you have recordings. Did you ever disclose to anyone that you had them prior to today? Yes, Kara replied. I told the investigators and my lawyer. Not the plaintiffs? No. Convenient, Croft scoffed. You appear now with cameras rolling. Kara held his gaze. The cameras did not ruin this family. Secrets did. Croft stood stock still for a moment. He addressed the judge. Move to strike. Denied, the judge replied. The jury will determine what holds water. Croft appeared defeated but continued. Ms. Bennett, you testified that you worked for them up to 2022. Did you get any termination compensation? Yes, Kara replied. $5,000. He smiled weakly. A whole lot of money for someone who was allegedly silenced, isn't it? Kara shook her head. That's what hush money tends to look like. Croft flushed. Objection! Sustained, the judge told him, but the harm was done. The jurors' eyes did the talking. Kara steepled her fingers. You may call it what you wish, she said softly. I know what it was like when I signed it. Croft attempted one final jab. You are asking this jury to believe that you alone, one accountant, penetrated a financial contraption that lawyers and producers didn't see for years. Kara nodded once. Yes, because I wasn't seeking profit. I was seeking patterns. The judge sat forward again. Mr. Croft, we've heard enough. Croft slumped back in his seat, defeated. The prosecutor rose again. Ms. Bennett, you've sworn under oath that the federal authorities now hold these files. Do you comprehend the seriousness of that testimony? Yes, Kara replied. Do you affirm all you've said today? She glanced at Kody and Robyn, then Christine and Janelle. Every word, the prosecutor nodded. No further questions. The judge inhaled deeply. This court will adjourn for today. We reconvene tomorrow at 9. He rapped the gavel. As the courtroom cleared, Kody remained seated, hands clasped together, gazing at the grain in the table. Robyn whispered something, a question, perhaps a plea, but he did not respond. A moment ago, across the aisle, Christine stood staring at him. For the first time, no anger glinted in her eyes, only weariness and a sorrow of a sort deeper than triumph. Janelle touched her arm. It's finally happening, she whispered. Christine nodded. Yeah. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, though. Because outside in the hallway, 2 men in dark suits waited. They weren't reporters or groupies. They were federal investigators, and come morning, they would alter the tenor of the whole trial. The testimony was over, but the real pandemonium was just getting started. The next morning, the courthouse looked different. Gone was the curious excitement of the early days. In its place sat tension, thick, electric, and almost painful. Everyone who had followed the case knew something had shifted. The prosecution no longer had to prove deceit. Kara Bennett's testimony had already cracked open the shell. Now the question was how deep the rot went. By 8:45 a.m., the benches were packed. Journalists leaned into their recorders. Viewers held their phones in anticipation of the next shock. The defense table was abuzz. Croft, his paralegal, 2 financial advisors, and Kody and Robyn, both dressed darker today, mourning the empire that still refused to accept was on its deathbed. Kody's jaw was clenched. His tie was askew, but no one had the nerve to straighten it. Robyn's eyes were puffy from weeping, yet her makeup attempted to conceal it. They hadn't exchanged a word since departing the courthouse the day before. What was there to say when every utterance between them now rested under oath? The judge came in at precisely 9 o'clock. Court is now in session, he announced. His voice was deeper today, not hot, but weighed down. The prosecutor rose. Your Honor, the plaintiffs rest their case. The judge nodded. Very well, defense may proceed. Croft rose slowly. His expression had changed too. Gone was the arrogance. In its place, something colder, desperation dressed as determination. He adjusted his cufflinks, glanced at Kody, then faced the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, we have heard a lot of noise over the last few days. Emotional stories. Selective documents. Recordings played out of context. But this isn't a morality play. It's a legal proceeding. He took a dramatic pause. And in law, intent is everything. He gestured toward Kody and Robyn, his palm outstretched like a preacher invoking trust. My clients are not criminals. They are human beings who constructed a messy life, a public, imperfect, yes, sometimes messy family. They made business choices in crisis, with dozens of mouths to feed and cameras in their faces at all times. Mistakes, okay? Malice? No. Christine's attorney shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Croft continued, voice rising. You've been shown numbers and accusations. But numbers don't tell stories, people do. And the people accusing my clients have motives of their own. Resentment, envy, revenge. He turned to the judge. The defense calls its first witness, Mr. Kody Brown. A hum went through the room. Christine looked at Janelle, who didn't even blink. They'd expected this. Of course he'd take the stand. Kody smoothed his jacket and proceeded to the witness box. He was the picture of the man who had lost control but would not admit it. His fingers trembled as he held them up for the oath. Do you swear to tell the truth? The whole truth, and nothing but the truth? The bailiff asked. I do, Kody replied, his voice breaking on the final word. Croft stepped forward. Mr. Brown, how long were you in charge of Family Traditions LLC? Since it started, Kody replied. We formed it together to manage all family income and expenses. And what was the intention of K&R Holdings? Kody adjusted his frame slightly. It was a sideline company for media consulting and public speaking, not secret, just a part. Croft nodded. Was it ever your plan to conceal funds from your wives or the family? Kody shook his head. Never. Every move I made was to defend the family. I was navigating chaos. The show money arrived in spurts. TLC did not pay on time. Bills stacked up. Someone had to keep the lights on. And that someone was you. Yes, Kody replied. It always was. No one else had the stomach for it. Croft smiled weakly. So, when you transferred funds from one account to another, what were you trying to accomplish? To keep things stable, Kody explained. To ensure the family didn't collapse financially. Croft pointed to the jury. You've heard terms such as fraud and concealment. Did you ever defraud anyone? No. Did you ever mean to harm Christine or Janelle? Kody's gaze flicked toward the plaintiff's table. No, he replied, his tone quieter this time. I loved them. I still do. The room was silent for an instant. Even Christine didn't shift. Croft noticed the break and pressed it. Mr. Brown, yesterday we listened to a recording. The prosecution stated it demonstrated intent to deceive. In your own words, what was the conversation about? Kody took a hard breath. It was frustration. It was the height of COVID. Everybody was screaming, blaming me for stuff I couldn't do anything about. I said some things I didn't mean. It was stress speaking, not planning. Croft nodded. So you're denying attempting to bury someone in paperwork? Kody smiled faintly, a bitter smile. I'm not clever enough to think that far ahead. A ripple of laughter shot through the gallery, and the judge narrowed her eyes. Croft paced nearer. One final question for the moment. If you were able to speak straight to your family, not the courtroom, not the cameras, just them, what would you say? Kody swallowed. I'd say, I never meant for it to go this far. I wanted to make something that would last. I failed, but I didn't steal. I didn't lie to ruin anyone. I just messed up. Croft faced the judge. No further questions. The prosecutor rose. Cross-examination. Kody's jaw clenched. He'd been fearing this. Mr. Brown, the prosecutor started gently, you've told us you never meant to deceive anyone. Is that right? Yes. She grabbed a folder. You also mentioned K&R Holdings was for consultation and public appearances. Can you account for the fact that the company bought jewelry, designer clothes, and home decor? Kody blinked. Those were gifts. Prop stuff. She nodded. For a family cohesion TV show? Kody shifted. It's complicated. Let's make it simple, she said. These receipts illustrate purchases that were sent directly to your home residence. Some were purchased the same week your wife Janelle sent an email requesting grocery reimbursements that were never paid. Do you recall that week? Kody's eyes dropped. No. The prosecutor's voice grew cold. You don't recall? Or you don't care? Croft began to protest, but the judge raised a hand. Kody's voice broke. I don't remember every expense. I did it all myself. Exactly, the prosecutor replied. You did it all, including concealing $400,000 in transfers, including using shell companies to hide income, including emails ordering your advisor to keep other wives in the dark. That's not chaos, Mr. Brown. That's control. Kody's face reddened. You think you understand my life? I know what the records say, she said, and what your own voice says on that recording. Kody slouched forward. That was private. You had no right. The judge's gavel crashed down. Mr. Brown. He sat back, gasping, his anger barely held in check. The prosecutor allowed the silence to hang before she continued. One last question. You've said this wasn't malice. So why did you issue a termination payment of $25,000 to Ms. Bennett marked consulting NDA attached? Kody stilled. The prosecutor's tone was quieter. If you weren't concealing something, what were you paying her not to speak? Kody's lips opened, but nothing came out. Robyn shut her eyes and shook her head, very slowly, whispering, Don't answer. The judge leaned forward. Answer the question, Mr. Brown. Kody gazed at the floor. I just wanted her to quit causing trouble. And that, Mr. Brown, the prosecutor said softly, is what concealment looks like. The courtroom exploded once more. The judge slammed his gavel. Croft spoke urgently under his breath, but Kody was already falling apart. You don't get it, he shouted. Any of you! They turned against me. They made me the bad guy. Mr. Brown, the judge snapped. But Kody wasn't finished. You all wanted a bad guy, didn't you? Fine, I'm the bad guy. But at least I kept us afloat while everyone else wanted to walk away. Security advanced. Christine remained still. Janelle looked at him as though she were gazing at a stranger. Robyn quietly wept. The judge's voice sliced through the turmoil. This witness is excused. Kody leaned back in his chair. The gavel fell once more forcefully than the first time. The judge regarded Croft. Do you want to call your next witness? Croft paused, looking at Robyn. Her face was white, her hands shaking. Yes, Your Honor, he answered at last. The defense calls Mrs. Robyn Brown. The prosecutor's eyebrow shot up. The crowd leaned forward once more. Robyn rose slowly, collecting herself as a woman moving into a tempest she'd helped unleash. She did not look at Christine, did not look at the cameras, and walked to the witness stand. Her heels clicked lightly against the tile. Tiny, contained noises which somehow reverberated more than Kody's yelling had just minutes before. She sat, laid a hand on the railing, and breathed softly. I do, when the oath was reached. Croft smiled kindly. Mrs. Brown, you've heard quite a few things about yourself the last few days. Before we get started, would you like to say something? Robyn's voice shook. Yes, I just want people to understand. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I wanted peace. That's all? Croft nodded. We'll get back to that, he addressed the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to hear will demonstrate to you the human aspect of all this. Not balance sheets, not transfers, hearts, families, faith. Christine sat in silence. She'd heard this tone before, the shaking voice, the wide eyes. It always worked, until it didn't. The prosecutor thumbed through her notes, already anticipating her cross. She knew what was coming next. What Robyn was about to say would distort the story, again. And yet, beyond the courthouse doors, waiting past the metal detectors and flashing cameras, there stood someone else, quietly, Kara Bennett, her phone in hand. On the phone was an unsolicited email notice from a number that she didn't know. The subject line read, You missed something. She opened it, and her face lost color. Files were inside, new ones. Audio logs she didn't even know she had, ones which would make tomorrow's testimony something much worse than everyone could ever have thought. In the courtroom, Robyn breathed deeply, ready to start. The judge gave a nod. Proceed. And as she started speaking, the ugliness everyone was dreading finally began to come into being. The courtroom lights were cold that morning, slicing through the gleaming surfaces and the faces that had become known after so many tedious days of testimony. Each camera lens anticipated her. Each pen hovered over a notebook. Each was anticipating the performance they had learned to expect. Robyn sat on the stand, fingers interlaced, eyes already welling with tears. The burden of what had occurred weighed upon her. Yesterday was bad enough. Cody's wrath spilling out into the open, Kara's recordings replaying on every news broadcast. Now there was no leeway for mistakes. Croft leaned forward with a smile that attempted to be reassuring. Mrs. Brown, let's begin simply. How would you describe your position in Family Traditions LLC? I took care of the house, Robyn said. I was the one who saw to it everyone had what they needed. The money was complicated. Kody did most of it, but he'd speak to me when it got too stressful. So you didn't help move money around accounts? No, she replied hastily. I just listened. I was trying to keep him calm. Croft nodded, his tone gentle. The prosecution wants us to think you were the brain behind secret accounts. Did you ever tell anyone to hide money? Robyn's eyes opened wide. No, never. That is not who I am. Croft moved his hand gently toward the jury. You're a mom, right? And in the years that these transactions occurred, how many kids were you living with in your home? 5, she replied. Some of them young. The pandemic was frightening. We were locked down. Everybody was mad at Kody, and he was mad at himself. I was just trying to keep my kids safe. Croft moved forward. So when Ms. Bennett mentioned that she overheard you instructing Mr. Brown to protect the assets for the little ones, what did you mean? Tears fell down Robyn's face. I meant just that and for the kids. We didn't have a cushion. The others were walking away. I didn't know if we were still going to be on the show. I wanted to ensure our bills would be able to be paid if everything collapsed. Croft nodded understandingly. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. I have no additional questions. The prosecutor stood slowly. She spoke softly at first, too softly for the palpable tension. Mrs. Brown, she said, you've called yourself a caretaker, someone who avoided the money, but we've had papers with your signature on some of the transfers. Can you tell me about it? Robyn drew a shaky breath. Kody said I should sign. He said it was for legal purposes, forms. I trusted him. Did you ever ask what you were signing? Sometimes, but Kody, he didn't like questions. The prosecutor nodded, turning a page. You said you trusted him. Did you also trust Elliot Harper, the Nevada financial advisor? Robyn blinked. I hardly knew him. The prosecutor held up an email. This email from your account, August 2020. Elliot, set the accounts under my name to private access only. We can't afford another leak. Do you deny that you wrote this? Robyn's mouth dropped open, then shut. Her voice broke. I don't know that I wrote it. The prosecutor pushed on. So it could be yours? I don't know, she stuttered. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Brown, give a direct answer. Did you or didn't you send that message? Robyn's sobs came harder now. I don't know, Your Honor. I truly don't know. The prosecutor stepped closer. Let's discuss the recording we listened to yesterday. You made the claim that you were keeping your family safe, but on that recording you instructed Kody to say, make it look like a refund. Do you still maintain that was concerning safety? Robyn's shoulders quivered. I was terrified. Everything was crumbling apart. People were attacking us on the internet. I just wanted it to end. Did you think that keeping money back would get it to stop? I didn't take anything, she wailed. The prosecutor maintained his composure. Then what did you mean when you said, make it look like a refund? Silence. Robyn's lower lip quivered. She glanced at Kody, who wouldn't meet her eye. Mrs. Brown? The prosecutor whispered gently. If you are still covering for someone, you don't have to. You're sworn now. The truth can do nothing but assist you. Robyn wiped a tissue across her lips, attempting to talk around the tears. He told me it was temporary. He said it was to keep things from getting heated with the network. I didn't think it was bad. You trusted him utterly? Yes. The prosecutor allowed the silence to linger, then spoke softly. After he lied to all the rest? Robyn's voice cracked. He's my husband. And being his wife made you an accessory, the prosecutor replied. Croft bellowed, Objection! Sustained, said the judge, though his eyes showed compassion for no one. The prosecutor collected her files, prepared to take a seat, when a buzz passed through the rear of the courtroom. A bailiff rushed in, spoke to the clerk, then presented a sealed envelope to the judge. He scowled, opened it, read for close to a minute before saying, Counsel, Come forward. The lawyers converged at the bench. The whispering was intense and rapid. Finally, the judge looked up. It appears new evidence has been submitted to the court by federal investigators. Audio recordings relevant to this case. Croft's face drained of color. Your Honor, this is unprecedented. The judge cut him off. It's evidence, Counselor, and admissible. We'll play one excerpt now. The bailiff dimmed the lights again. The same low static filled the room. Then a man's voice, Kody's, angry, unmistakable. If they trace it back, we'll say it was Robyn's error. She signed. She'll take the heat if it comes to that. Robyn gasped. Another voice followed, her own, recorded clearer than she remembered. I can't do that again, Kody. It's wrong. Kody's voice came again, lower, colder. You already did. The audio ended. The lights came back up. For several seconds, no one moved. Robyn's breathing was in short gasps. She sat with her face pale, gazing directly ahead. He taped me? The prosecutor shook her head. No, that was the security system, Mrs. Brown. The same one your accountant discussed. Robyn's frame started to tremble. He told me it was private. He told me that no one would ever— The judge rapped the gavel once, this time softly. Mrs. Brown, take a moment if you need it. She was crying openly now, hiding her face. Her voice was muffled in her hands. He made me the scapegoat. Croft spun around to her hastily. Don't say another word! But it had come too late. Robyn dropped her hands, her eyes red and wild. He promised he'd look after us. He said it was all for the family. He made me sign things I didn't know what they were for. He said the money was secure, that it was for the children, that he'd sort it out later. Mrs. Brown, Croft attempted again. She disregarded him. He lied to me too, she screamed. He lied to all of them. The room erupted in a cacophony of noise. Reporters, whispers, gasps, the clicking of cameras sounding like gunfire. Kody leapt to his feet. Shut up, he shouted. Robyn glared at him, sobbing. You destroyed everything. The judge's gavel came down hard, sounding like thunder. Order, order! Security intervened between them as Kody pounded his fist on the table. She's making it into some kind of circus. She's telling the truth, the prosecutor muttered. Robyn nodded her head, crying. I didn't hurt anyone on purpose. I was trying to help. Christine sat quietly at the table of the plaintiffs, her heart pounding, but her expression tranquil. It felt dreamlike to see the woman who had sat above them all, beyond reach, finally break beneath the force of the truth. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Brown, do you require a recess? Robyn shook her head feebly. No, Your Honor, I just want it to be over. The prosecutor moved in closer. Mrs. Brown, you testified he made you sign papers you didn't know what they were. Did you retain any copies? Robyn paused. Some. Where are they now? She glared at Kody. In a safe. In the Flagstaff house. The prosecutor nodded. We'll ask for a warrant. Croft began to object, but the judge held up a hand. It's noted. Continue. Robyn leaned back in her chair, exhausted. He said we'd never be caught, she breathed. The judge's voice softened. Mrs. Brown, are you admitting to guilt? I'm admitting to trusting him, she said. It was all over. Everyone knew it. The prosecutor sat down. Croft stood frozen, gazing at the floor. Kody looked at Robyn with fury and disbelief, but beneath it all there was fear. The kind of fear that comes when every lie you've built finally catches fire. The judge called for recess, but no one moved. It was as if the entire courtroom needed a moment to breathe. Robyn stood on shaky legs. For an instant, she seemed as if she would reach out to Kody, but his eyes were ice, locked on some distant point. She turned rather toward the gallery, where Christine and Janelle sat. Their eyes met. Christine did not speak, but her look conveyed everything. This is what truth costs. Robyn lowered her head and walked out of the courtroom, her sobs echoing in the heavy air. Outside, reporters swarmed, shouting her name, cameras flashing. She didn't answer. She just kept walking, her voice breaking on the same word she'd repeated in every interview, every confession, every lie that had built this moment. I'm sorry. And as she vanished through the doors of the courthouse, Christine faced her attorney. That wasn't the end, was it? The attorney shook her head deliberately. No, not even close. The search warrant for the safe in Flagstaff just got signed. Christine glanced toward the bench where Kody remained. Sitting now, alone and gazing at the vacant witness stand where his final defender had disintegrated. His empire walls were destroyed. But somewhere deep within that safe, behind steel and behind secrets, was yet another truth, the sort that could destroy him entirely. And when the court reconvened, all would witness what truly lay within. The courthouse was quiet in the strange manner it only can be when everyone is in terror of what is to come next. The walls breathed, and whispers of what had occurred and what still remained to be seen wafted along. Weeks had passed now, but each morning had brought a fresh headline, fresh evidence, another wound flayed open. Today was meant to be the last. Christine and Janelle sat together, wordless, their fists clenched in each other's palms. In the other room, Kody gazed straight ahead at the vacant witness stand. He hadn't shaved in days. His immaculate hair was now flecked with gray, and his suit appeared to have lost all hope. Robyn wasn't sitting with him. She hadn't returned since the day she cracked on the stand. The judge came in. The gavel rang once. The sound lingered a little longer than it should have. "This court is reconvened," the judge declared. "We have come to the end of testimony and closing arguments. The jury has been out 23 hours. They have signaled they have a verdict." The air went cold. The bailiff went into the side door and came back with the jury. 12 faces, expressionless, burdened with each secret, each tear, each dollar concealed. The judge addressed the foreperson. "Is the verdict unanimous?" "We are, Your Honor." The clerk accepted the envelope and passed it to the judge. The sound of paper rustling was the only noise in the room. Christine sensed Janelle's hand clench. Kody's leg jackknifed under the table, knuckles pale and white against the wood. The judge read softly to himself, then glanced up. "In the case of Brown versus Brown," he began, "on the charge of breach of fiduciary duty, we, the jury, find in favor of the plaintiffs." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Christine closed her eyes. Janelle breathed out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. The judge went on. "On the charge of fiscal wrongdoing and cover-up, we rule in the plaintiff's favor." Kody's jaw clenched. His fingers curled into fists on the table. The judge hesitated. "On the charge of emotional distress and knowing deception, we rule in the plaintiff's favor." It was done. The quiet that followed wasn't relief. It was the sound of something bigger, finality, the end of a myth that had endured too long. The judge read the damages next. Unbelievable numbers. Words like restitution and penalties that only scratched the surface of what had been lost. When he was finished, there was no clap, no gasp. Just silence. Christine whispered, "We did it." Janelle nodded, but her eyes were glassy. "It doesn't feel like winning," she said softly. Behind him, Kody sat stiff as a board. The judge's words receded behind the din in his own mind, an empty ringing that drowned out all else. The words ran together. Ordered to sell. Accounts frozen. Federal investigation ongoing. He glanced towards the door as though Robyn would suddenly materialize, as though she'd rescue him like she always did. But the doorway was vacant. The gavel of the judge came down for the final time. "This court is adjourned." Reporters jumped to their feet. Cameras flashed. Christine and Janelle rose slowly, side by side, hands locked together. For a moment, they gazed at Kody, not with anger, not even with victory, but with pity. He did not turn back. Safety was around him as the crowd surged forward. His attorney spoke, but he did not hear. He only heard the same words over and over in his head. Robyn's voice on that tape, "You already did." Outside, the courthouse steps were pandemonium. Microphones, flashes, the din of a crowd starving for an ending. But for Christine and Janelle, it wasn't noise. It was background. None of it mattered anymore. They had reached the top of the stairs, the wind biting at their faces. Christine leaned forward and whispered, "It's over." Janelle turned to her, shaking her head very slightly. "No," she said. "Look, a black sedan stopped at the curb down the street. 2 men in suits emerged from the back seat. The same federal investigators who had been sitting silently in the back of the courtroom for days. One of them held a small evidence box. Christine's chest constricted. "What is that?" The man stepped forward, displaying his badge. "Ms. Brown," he stated, voice steady but weighed. "We retrieved the contents of the Flagstaff safe this morning." Janelle furrowed her brow. "You mean the one Robyn spoke of?" He nodded. "There's something you should see." He lifted the box just high enough for them to glimpse the top piece, a sealed envelope labeled, "Confidential, to be opened upon my death." The handwriting was unmistakable. Kody's. Christine's gut fell. "What is this?" The agent shook his head. "We don't know yet. But there's more." Several hard drives were inside, encrypted. "We're sending them for analysis. You may be called back to testify if they contain new material." Janelle's face went pale. "New material?" "Yes," the agent said. "Possibly connected accounts, additional assets, and other names." "Other names?" Christine echoed. He nodded once more, his voice dropping. "It seems as if someone outside the family was involved in arranging everything. A partner. Someone still operating." Christine and Janelle looked at each other. In the background, the courthouse doors opened once more. Kody stepped out, flanked by security, cameras popping like lightning. His face was empty, flat, the look of a man who was already existing somewhere else. A world of consequences. He saw Christine for a fraction of a moment. Something flashed across his face. Not hatred, not remorse. Just awareness. He knew what they'd discovered. He leaned over into his lawyer, saying something under his breath no one else could catch. The lawyer went rigid, his face pale. "What did he say?" Janelle breathed. Christine shook her head. "I don't know." The agents closed the evidence box. "We'll be in touch," one of them said, and they disappeared into the crowd. Christine stood there, the winter wind cutting through her coat, watching the sedan pull away. For a moment, everything was quiet. The noise of the reporters, the hum of the city, it all faded. And then, far away above the sound of the crowd, she caught Robyn's voice. Somewhere off to one side, behind the cameras, Robyn was sobbing, screaming something into the wind. "He said it wasn't over." Her voice cracked on the words, wild and frightened. "He said they'd never find the rest." The reporters swung around, microphones up. Christine stopped. "The rest?" one of them bellowed. "What are you talking about, the rest?" But Robyn didn't respond. She elbowed through the crowd, her sobs ringing off courthouse walls, fading down the stairs like the tail end of a confession. Kristen remained rooted, the words wheeling in her mind. "The rest? What did that mean?" She glanced at Janelle, white and trembling. "He said they'd never find the rest," Janelle whispered. "Christine, what if there's more?" Christine watched as the agent's car vanished into the traffic. The envelope. The drives. The partner. It hit her like a storm bursting open the sky. "This wasn't the end," she whispered. "This was the cover." The cameras popped once more. The questions poured in like waves, but Christine didn't hear any of it. The only thing she could do was hear the faint whisper of Robyn's voice, disappearing into the wreckage around her. "He told me that they'd never find the rest." And in some dimly lit room far removed from the courthouse building, a computer fan hummed on. A progress bar inched its way across a screen. One of those encrypted drives had just been inserted. A folder name flashed. Coyote Holdings, restricted access. And then, beginning one by one, files decrypted. The screen flashed. And at the end of the list, a single file name glowed dimly. Accountant, memo2.mp4. The flash of the camera outside the courthouse dissipated into dusk. Christine spun away, her words little more than a whisper. "It's not over." And it wasn't. Because the truth, the one that had so eagerly been dragged kicking into the light, was only the tip of the iceberg. The rest was still lurking in the dark,